When was the first time you ignored Bitcoin? It just hit me like, yes, this is what I've been missing my whole life. The more I would learn, the more I'd realize, oh, wow, this is more than I expected. And it shakes you down to your soul.
You're more likely to mess up and lose your Bitcoin because of user error, because you forget, because it's so complex.
You don't really need much of a puzzle. You just need some real basic ADIQ obscurity.
Bitcoin and Bitcoin self-custody fundamentally are two very simple things in what they do, but they're easy to overcomplicate. Welcome back to the show. Today we are joined by co-founder of MicroSeed, an amazing bit of equipment. Fritz, thanks so much for jumping on. I can't wait to dive into all things self-custody, MicroSeed, and Bitcoin today. How are you doing?
Awesome. I've had a day of work. It's the end of my day, so it's great joining you to just polish off a nice, fun day with you. Finn, I really enjoy having me on your show. It's been an honor of mine to participate in this with you.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. If we bring everything right back, how did you get into Bitcoin, and when did you then realize that self-custody was super important as well?
Yeah, a joke of mine is that, when was the first time you ignored Bitcoin? Because we have that story where you heard of it and then you did nothing, or you were like, or you get distracted by all the things going on. And so it was about 2013, and I was working in a jail of all places, and night shift with guys that were into sports and the lottery. And I mean, I guess you'd call it speculation, gambling, sports betting, stuff like that, and games. And somebody had mentioned Bitcoin just cursorily among other stuff, like a token of things. And I chalked it up entirely as part of a gaming thing, just to, kind of I would think for kids or for guys that are into online games. I mean, there were online gaming type token stuff. And I didn't know anything about it. I really just superficially dismissed it as like a gaming token. Didn't know what it did at all, just like another one of those. And for years, didn't think of it again, didn't hear much about it, just given the nature of where I was looking. And even though I have a background in computer science and tech, I just categorically dismissed it because I knew better. Totally outside my paradigm of what this really was. And so, it was years later. It wasn't until 2019-ish or later on, I'd left the jail. I went on into parole and probation. That's where I'm at now, is parole and probation. And a coworker of mine there at the office was looking at, and at the time, things like Ethereum were blowing up, and online real estate and the NFTs and the metaverse and all this stuff. And now Bitcoin was there as well. And I didn't know the difference between a lot of that. And he mentioned Ethereum and Bitcoin and meta real estate and all this stuff. And I was like, huh. And he said, hey, you got to listen to this podcast. It was Tom Bilyeu with Impact Theory. Now, Bilyeu has gone on to a lot. I mean, he's done a lot of stuff, business and, personal affirmations and positive energy and goals and all kinds of everything, politics. So eclectic guy, smart guy. And he had randomly a podcast that my coworker had listened to with Robert Breedlove. And it was getting into Bitcoin and what is money. And so because my coworker mentioned it, hey, you'll like this. You like computers. This is new stuff. And I was like, okay, I'll check it out, see what's happening. And Bilyeu was kind of, he had ads on about how to buy Ethereum and get into some shitcoinery and stuff. Not that he was anti-Bitcoin, just he was into all the things. And Robert Breedlove was straight on Bitcoin and what is money, taxation, inflation, all the things. And it resonated with stuff from, I was prepped for it, tech background, cynical about the nature of the economy and the Federal Reserve. I guess you might say I was a bit of a gold bug from a decade prior, just like, the game's rigged, it's all screwy, but there's no fix, there's no solution. I guess you can hoard gold and ammo. And I was kind of black-pilled. I was just like, it's such a rigged game. And I was just like, whatever, pay my taxes. And so when I heard Breedlove talking about Bitcoin, suddenly it started to connect some dots about, oh, he gets like what money is, but he's framing it in a very cohesive way. And then I looked at Ethereum and I dabbled in that, but I kept going back to Bitcoin because when I went to Robert Breedlove's site then with What is Money, and he had the Sailor series, and I just gobbled the Sailor series down like nuts. That was in early 2020. And I just listened to the whole damn thing like nonstop. And it suddenly just point by point by point, all the things that Sailor and that Breedlove was bouncing off, it just hit me like, yes, this is what I've been missing my whole life. And suddenly my black pill was transitioning into some glimmer of hope, and that there's a solution here and it's an escape hatch. And now still I'm kind of thinking number go up, of course. Like I didn't quite understand the revolutionary, peaceful revolution of it all, but it planted a huge seed that sprouted quick. So yeah, 2020, um, it took me cringingly, I can't remember, but it was like 6 to 9 months to divest myself of shitcoinery. I was kind of thinking, hey, if one of these moons, and I'm great, and I'll just like diversify into shit. And so, if you don't mind me cursing here, I had an idea that I was so smart, or I'd diversify and like something would take off, and Bitcoin's great, but there's others, too. Anyway, after about 6 to 9 months, Ethereum was talking proof of stake and all that. And I was like, at that point, I understood proof of work and the nature of a large decentralized secure network and the protocol. And I'm like, yeah, I'm done with all the other stuff. I went pretty full on Bitcoin maxi towards mid to end of 2020. Just been learning ever since. I mean, you know how the rabbit hole goes. The more I would learn, the more I'd realize, oh, wow, this is more than I expected. And it shakes you down to your soul. One of those steps being self-custody. I started going to a lot of different podcasts, Marty Bent, Matt Odell, some of the news and technical side of things, Preston Pish, and then, I mean, there's so many names out there, Matthew Cratter, and many, many voices out there just started to plant their seeds here and there throughout the entire ecosystem. And I just was getting everything I could from everywhere I could and learning along the way, studying it, I started to run a node. I got a hardware device and was like, oh, okay, so I'm going to take self-custody because I understood the nature of, okay, who has the keys? So, like, not that I don't trust these guys, but, just sort of like I trust my bank too, right? And yeah, so, but I was pretty based just to my core. So, with a based foundation and having been black pilled and then understanding Bitcoin, I was ready to understand running a node, taking self custody. And so I started doing that.
Such a super organic journey, and in my opinion, one of the most important aspects of Bitcoin that I think the majority of people are still terrified about. I just want to touch on that side from the conversations you have and your perspective. What do you think that most people misunderstand about self-custody, and linking to MicroSeed about seed phrases as well?
I think most people for a good long time, and perhaps ever, I've met people that were kind of quite Bitcoin curious for months or even over a year, and they still don't really know what a node is. They don't know what the keys really do. The private and the public key security is a concept. It's just kind of new to people. And so what they're used to in terms of a key is more like either something physical or something that you often naturally, when it's something of value, you entrust with a third party. And that the whole language of our sense of trust in the world, in our fiat world, involves third parties or central authorities. And so it's just about like picking the right one, or, well, I like this bank better than the other big bank, or, like you have these options in a way, or you have a good attorney, or you have a good accountant, or you have, your guy, your broker. And for a lot of people, the language of security does not involve privacy at all, or a sense of sovereignty or self-responsibility to an extent. So a lot of people are just naturally born into a world where you got to trust a professional. And so when it comes to money, it's like, well, you need that professional. What's funny about Bitcoin is that it short-circuited a whole world of me where instead of this whole razzle-dazzle hustle game of like the markets or the stocks and the companies and the personalities and the options and the games, it was like trying to you had a second job. Like you go to work at a job to make money, and then if you want to lever up, you have a second job of managing your money. And that that could be gambling unless you have a professional that helps you gamble well, basically. And um, so you want that professional if you have much that you value. And I think people are just presuming that you need a professional to do like professional stuff. And Bitcoin short circuits the whole game. It simplifies it so simply that, hey, there's one fixed set of rules on one protocol that does the thing that you need and fixes the game. It realigns the whole system, and you don't have to like fix that or second guess that or be smarter than that. It just simply works. So it simplifies your whole formula on what in the heck you're doing about the future and your time and your energy. And so as as Bitcoiners learn over time, we're all familiar with these ideas. So I think what holds people back is that sense of, one, that you don't need like a third professional to interpret all this stuff for you. The game's simple. The rules are simple. You stay humble and you stack. So then the next step there being, okay, so there's keys involved, understanding that basic concept of public or private keys on transactions. It's not hard, but some people, it's just less familiar. So if you just get over that little bit of a hump on private public key security, well, then your private key suddenly becomes the thing, the very important thing. That one concept about your private key can kind of hit you hard, where suddenly you're like, oh, okay, so if I just want to do this myself and not rely on anybody, it's a whole world of all the psychology or techniques around OPSEC. And that can be quite a rabbit hole. So it's like, oh my good, okay, so I've got a piece of paper with I don't know if you can see them. Okay, those are all fake, but I've got a piece of paper with words on it, and that's my key apparently, um the 12 words or the 24 words. Okay, so that's a key. Now what? And I've heard so many different things you can do. But when you spend enough time navigating that path and you come to the idea that, okay, you want this in granite on your own, absolutely secure, tamper proof, secure, and obscure medium, yeah, you go towards not just putting it in a safe or somewhere that is safe and obscure and insecure, but on a medium that has those properties. So, okay, metal, steel, titanium. So that's a step if you start thinking about this and you care about it. I think for some people, the amount of time involved with following those steps is a little more when they're distracted and they're not used to it. It's just kind of like, they're not hard steps. There's a few of them. And so people don't take them very quickly. So unless you have a mentor, like a Bitcoin mentor, I was lucky enough to have a friend or two that were following a similar path, a little ahead, a little behind, but we were navigating this together. And so we shared in these thoughts and taking those little steps. And so for me, that's where, okay, I get metal now. And then with MicroSeed and with Daniel's idea, it was like, okay, not just metal, but small, maybe quite illegible, like a feature, not a bug. People have said, well, it's so small, I can hardly see it. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of a feature. It's there. I mean, you might need your little magnifying glass, but with reasonable eyesight, you can see it. But it's a kind of a feature. So okay, so it's real small. It's 1 inch and on metal, and you can cover it as a nothing burger washer. You can cover it with another washer or put it in the back of your safe on that bolt. So somebody breaks into your safe, they see whatever other stuff, maybe they take stuff, whatever, but they would never think that that washer that is behind the bolt holding your safe to the wall is anything. And meanwhile, that's the keys to your kingdom. So it's another epiphany, if you will, of people realizing that you don't have to get super wild and complicated about all this stuff. Sometimes people think that obscurity and security need to be a real puzzle. Now, with multi-sig, it can become a bit of a, something to think about, sure. But when it comes, to a key or a few keys, it does not have to be all that complicated. And I think what tools like this and others do, but particularly MicroSeed, what it does is streamline like a path. So like you've mentioned, like, people are kind of like, okay, well, what's the next step? What do I do? I don't, there's so many options. I don't know where to start. And it's really good to lay out a good, clear, nice, simple path for them. Okay. First, get a cold card. Okay. Did that. Good. Step one, check the box. Two, get a MicroSeed. Stamp it out. Oh, cool. Did that. Put it in the back of your safe, whatever. Three, get a node. Get yourself a start 9, whatever. Run a node. Oh, kind of plug and play. And you just pave that path. So it's not like, okay, there's only 3 steps here, but each step is like 20 options. I'm like, it's overwhelming. I don't want to mess up. People don't want to mess up, and they're managing their money. So you paint that path really clearly. First, just do this. Just get this one thing and do this one thing. Easy. Paint it out for them. Just yeah. So it's a straight, more of a paved path we've all tread on before. And microseed being a step on that path is, I think, a nice, real based way to go. Simple, but high quality for sure. Cold card, microseed. I might say start 9, real high quality.
Yeah, you are literally reading my checklist for clients from my mind. So that's super cool. And I completely agree with you. And also on the point of the complexity side of things, for me, especially people that are skeptical, which I have no problem with. I always tell people to stay skeptical and assume most things as a scam. But the flip side of that is that people try to make the wildest treasure map because they think
Mhm.
that's making them more secure. When actually, you obviously want your setup as secure as possible, but you also want it as close to least complex as possible for you, for your situation, because so long as you're set up correctly, you're more likely to mess up and lose your Bitcoin because of user error, because you forget because it's so complex, than
Uh-huh.
getting hacked, as long as you set it up
Have you ever had
correctly.
a password where you thought hard about something because you wanted just your password for a login to be, complicated, but you surely could remember it, and then you just didn't log in for a few months, and then you're like, it's, you know it, and for some reason you just can't remember it, and you're like, oh, and you made it a little too complicated or whatever. And it does not have to be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've got a couple more questions that perhaps, I mean, they're long-winded open questions, but if we can try and short fire them as much as possible.
Sure.
First one being, in your opinion, what makes having their backup set up correctly? Obviously, stamping into a microseed, but beyond
Mhm.
that, in terms of distribution and things.
So I would say, so let's presume you're doing a single key. And if all you have is a single key, for me, I mean, it sounds simple enough, and I mentioned it, but you stamp on a little 1-inch washer, however you want to do that. And whether you cover that with another washer or it's just on one side of the washer, in my mind, a real simple way you can remember it is that, yes, it's in your safe, but it's behind a bolt that bolts to the wall, say. A little bit to get on and off or whatever, but you can have it in your safe and it just looks like a washer. It can even be like just a fake bolt or setup that's easier to remove, but single key that way. Now, when it comes to multi-sig, it depends on, so if it's just you, a lot of this really boils down to ideas around, like, okay, people think of multi-sig, for example, like, what happens if I step out off the sidewalk and get hit by a bus? And what happens? Because you have family or you have kids or you have a wife. That's where family involvement or the closest trusted relationships you have about it can involve things like multi-sig. So it definitely boils down to, when there's others involved, I'm just going to say your spouse, communication, where I think in one regard, you can each have your own key, if you will, and quasi geographically separated. I don't think you have to, put them in different cities, but even in your house, just um, obvious places that, she may have hers, you have yours, and then you both know where the second one is or the third one is. And so, depending on the level of trust, I mean, marriages are crazy. You never know what happens in marriage itself. I mean, I've been through my own crazy story with that, but You trust someone, and then maybe later you don't. So you got to think about to what level you involve anyone else at all. It can even be that some couples you just keep separate stacks. That maybe sometimes there's a trust in marriage where it's like you merge your money so you can plan together. It can be, as a professional marriage goes, an understanding that we communicate, we talk about it, but we just keep separate stacks. That might be an appropriate way to go. You still love each other. You just might handle that differently. But if she's a real Bitcoiner or you got different plans involved, then 2 out of 3 can make a lot of sense. Now it can be that depending on that, you each have one and then you both know of a third. Or you could each have one and have that third one in a safety deposit box or with a custodian, whether that's your attorney or perhaps family. But I think 2 out of 3 multi-sig is a real solid way to go in that regard. For me, it always goes down to, I would just say, get a MicroSeed, do it on a washer, do it on washers if you have more than one that you need. And then they don't pile them all up together. They can be in different parts of the same room or different rooms in the same house. Doesn't have to get any more crazy than that. And honestly, for most people, anything more involved gets complicated quick or not that you'd necessarily forget it, but it's just more of a puzzle to unravel. And you stress yourself out adding any complexity beyond that. It's easy to imagine a puzzle of security and feeling better about having a puzzle. The thing is, you don't really need much of a puzzle. You just need some real basic ADIQ obscurity. The microseed itself gives you a lot of obscurity, and then the seed phrase itself is the security. I would just recommend keeping it super simple, to be honest. Don't overthink it. But once you have a plan, stick to it. If you decide to change something later down the road, make that real deliberate and real specific in just one way. But don't keep changing it unless there's a real reason for that. If you start something and it works well enough, I'd stick with that.
Yeah, Bitcoin and Bitcoin self-custody fundamentally are two very simple things in what they do, but they're easy to overcomplicate, like you've said, and that can lead to issues. Whereas if you just see Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, store of value, unit of account, that it can send value from A to B without permission from anyone, and self-custody is being responsible for your own Bitcoin.
I will add one concept is that, like Cedar will do this. Cedar sells a vault. Maybe I shouldn't say anything, but we have our own concept with a vault forthcoming. You can easily put a seed or more than one, as many as you want, really, whatever you want to do. Simple little vault, but something that's weatherproof, waterproof, and put your washer in a little vault, seal that up. And if you wanted to, simply in your backyard or somewhere accessible to you, bury it. People get complicated with that as well, but you can pretty simply put a vault somewhere too, and then it can be in the ground. So it's an extra layer there if you wanted to. I'll say a vault concept is quite simple and adds that extra layer of, quite base security. And just maybe something away from your house. If you had to abandon your house, say you had the extreme situation, you got a bug out, you got your go bag, and for some reason you had to leave your house, depending on where you live. Some people might, different countries or whatever, you might contemplate, I may actually have to leave where I live for a period of time, briefly, or who knows, and you got to bug out. It could be some peace of mind that, you have to leave your house, but you've got a vault buried in a hole far enough away that you can just be away and grab that. So that's a backup. That's another backup for people I'll mention.
Yeah, having multiple redundancies geographically just makes sense, and in my opinion, pretty crazy to not have those redundancies in place. Last question, because we're running over the shortened version of this. It's all good. It's been really cool. In terms of, you touched on it briefly, but in terms of inheritance planning,
yep,
that's often a big concern for people that are new coming into this space. And again, there's lots of different perspectives on what is right.
Mm-hmm.
And that again ranges from simple and effective to super, super complex. So
Mm-hmm.
from your perspective, what are some things that people could be thinking about to consider in terms of inheritance planning and making sure that that Bitcoin isn't just gone when or doesn't just die with you?
Yeah, it parallels some of what I've said before. It boils down to communication and an understanding. I can see a lot of situations where until dad unexpectedly died, we ignored Bitcoin. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, what did dad do? I mean, did he leave a treasure map somewhere? Or what did he say that one time? Communication's key. When I think of kids, I have a range from a 21-year-old to a 4-year-old right now. And variously, they all have Bitcoin, which they don't have self custody of. Now, you'd say, now, and I also have an 18-year-old. So you'd say, okay, an 18-year-old, a 21-year-old, with the right education and philosophy, with over time and relationship, yes, they could totally take self custody. With my kids, just so happens because of timing and the stage when I got into it, and as I learned and as I taught them what I could, as a parent, I would just say they're not ready. They're busy, they're in school, they're distracted. It's another responsibility, kind of like taking on your own car insurance or your phone bill, or it's kind of like every kid's different. So when is your kid ready? It involves communication and education. So there can be a point where your kid gets old enough and they understand it and you pass the torch, if you will. For a lot of kids, and I'd say it's not age dependent, it's very much when they're ready in their life. And it could be, once they have a job and they're settled down, or maybe once they're married or later, or maybe decide they're never quite there. You never know. But you want to prep them so that they can understand maybe a basic concept, a basic plan. I would say you could give them a little bit to practice with, so that maybe you give them a little bit, and you literally give them a seed phrase, give them a stamped washer, and say, "This is yours. Keep it safe. Whatever." See what they do with it. See how they handle it. See if they ask questions. See where it goes. It's going to be very much on their personal responsibility and willingness to be sovereign about it. And you can't force them, so they got to take it on their own. What you might do too, as a contingency, so that your inheritance isn't just up and lost. You either have to, not perfect, but a simple way to do it is that the family just knows that it's in the safe. As far as research on what do you do with the seed phrase, they'll have to learn that. Or maybe you have a trusted mentor that can help them if you trust them. Could be your wife or spouse. Now, this is multifaceted and gets complicated, I know, but I would just say start with single key, let them test it out, practice, kind of get a feel for it, that they kind of know in the back of their mind, I have Bitcoin and I have keys somewhere I need to keep safe somehow, and let them navigate that in their life. The redundancy or the backup, the family treasury, perhaps should be multi-sig, so that they get a key and they know that trusted dad or mom has the second one they may need, specifically in a safe, that if dad got hit by a bus, they would know, well, at some point, we will get into dad's safe. And then there's a key in there. And with dad's key and my key, I can have more of maybe mine or their allotment. You break it up, their allotment. And, or perhaps, depending on how you want your inheritance to go, maybe it's the family's treasury that you do that way. I'd say don't give people so much weight that they have to carry, that if they get a little over their skis, they fall right over. Start with a small amount and let them let that percolate in their mind and let them feel that and see where that goes. Worst case is a backup. You get hit by a bus. Yes, they've got maybe one of two, and the second one, they just know where that is. Are they going to rob you? That's where the trust comes in. If you get hit by a bus and they can at some point get access to that safe, then they know what to do. Pretty simple. I think I talk a lot about things that don't have to be complicated. There's so many options involved when it involves other people, and Who do you trust? Who are those people in your family? Who do you want involved? And every single person you add to that equation adds to a kind of complication that if you want to do this if you have 3, 4 kids and you want to do this for each kid, just realize you got to keep track of what is what and where's where. So that's where you might have something written down like instructions that don't dox too much. They don't dox the security, but they might dox a process. But then human and geographic security come into play at that point, and you can remain safe. And then you have to keep an eye on that. You keep an eye on that. If something changes, it changes in the family or something gets doxed, well, just be ready to make a pivot, just a simple, deliberate pivot. Same plan, just different keys, maybe.
Yep. Stay on top, stay ahead, and stay simple over complex.
Yeah.
That is a great way to end. I've got a bunch more questions, but I'm going to save them for the next episode. Fritz, thanks so much for jumping on. That was super insightful. And for anyone listening, MicroSeed is an amazing product. I use them myself. All of my clients use them. Fritz, where can we
Awesome.
find you, your podcast, and MicroSeed will, of course, be in the show notes as well.
Yeah, I've got a podcast of my own on YouTube and Rumble elsewhere. You can find Bitcoin Liberty Live. If you search for Bitcoin Liberty Live, I've got, lots of past content on there. Started with just me and Daniel talking, evolved into guests and other little, just kind of me talking on a topic for myself. On X as well, Bitcoin Liberty Live. It truncates it to Bitcoin Liberty L, but you'll find me, Bitcoin Liberty Live, on X as well. And then if you go to microseed.io, you'll find our company there, microseed.io. And I'm listed on there as one of the, what am I? I'm the head militiaman at MicroSeed.
Yeah, awesome. And I'll definitely put that in the show notes. There's actually a 5% discount code in there as well for anyone listening. It's an amazing product that can be reused, gifted, or lent to friends and family locally to also use. They just need to get their own washers, which is why I'm a massive advocate. And like you said, it's small enough that you could lose it, which is a
One
feature.
tool, make all the keys you need. Lend the tool to a friend. Let them make all the keys they need. You just need one tool and you can make as many as you want.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more. Fritz, thanks so much for jumping on. We'll have to do another one at some point into the future. And guys, we'll see you on the next one.